really give a Fabric kind of refresher. And I say refresher because probably most of you work with Fabric or just Power BI, or at least know a little bit about it. So I'm not going to bore you with the details of the fun SaaS pieces, right? But one thing I will talk about is really the pieces that are going to help you understand kind of the big vision and the big scope and the power of what data agents are, right? So first off, we have part of Fabric, you can see here on the screen, we have our different workloads, right? Data factory, integration, analytics that has all of our warehouse and things like that, and Lakehouse and Spark and all that good stuff. We have databases, which also just went GA at Ignite for SQL and for Cosmos DB. We also have our real-time hub, and then we have our new workload IQ. So that's the piece that we're gonna talk about, at least I'm gonna educate on, because it's new and Fabric data agents are a part of IQ, which again, just a new workload, just like Power BI, our fan favorite. So really the biggest thing out of this before I get into IQ and data agents is this concept of bringing in data from anywhere. So there's two concepts, shortcuts and mirrors. And I promise, just like everything, my long rambles will make sense and there's a point. So Fabric has the ability to bring data in from inside or outside of Azure. So there are two ways to do that. So one is through a shortcut. And so shortcuts, think like a desktop shortcut, right? Something that physically looks like it's on your desktop, or in this case, Fabric, but it doesn't physically live there, nor do the controls to access that, right? So this is for files. And again, there's always exceptions to everything, but it's just a generalization is that shortcuts are really for files. And so think if you have a Parquet file or a CSV living in Amazon S3 or GCP, I mean, it could be even a server inside of your basement, right? You would be able to, assuming network visibility, to shortcut that to make it physically look like it's in Fabric. You would do that through lake houses and things like that. So very powerful stuff. You can read it, you can mess with all that data, you can pull it into dashboard. You get to leverage all the experiences at the very top of this image. So all of our different workloads that we talked about. IQ is not listed here, it's a little outdated slide. But what's important is that once it physically looks like it's in Fabric, we get to mess with all the goodies about that. So all of our nice computes of our SQL compute, our Spark compute, all those different pieces we get to leverage because again, it physically looks like it's there. Now, mirroring is a little bit different. Same concept of extending out, but I like to think about mirroring for databases. So this is your proprietary formats, SQL Server, proprietary format, Snowflake, Oracle, SAP. I know Databricks is listed on here. This is one of the exceptions. I'll explain that. But when we talk about mirroring, this is an asynchronous near real-time replication of your data. Now, what it does is, for example, SQL Server, is it hooks up to your change data capture and streams that change to Fabric. What it also does is convert it from SQL into Delta Parquet. Also, mirroring is potentially free for you. Microsoft includes the storage and the compute to do the mirror and the storing of that actual copy for free up to your SKU in terabytes. What does that mean? If you have an F64, that means you get 64 terabytes compressed of mirrored data. I've had customers that have mirrored their entire Snowflake data warehouse, which is 55 terabytes. They get to do that on an F64, which if you use a pay-as-you-go with no other discounts whatsoever and no reserved instances, it is $8,000 a month, depending on the region, right? So they're able to replicate that, get a free read replica across their board. Now, why is that important? They've just extended their data estate in the Fabric to start leveraging all these pieces for free and through a wizard. There are abilities to actually do what's called open mirroring. I'm not going to talk about that too much, but basically if you don't fall into the out-of-the-box mirroring, you basically get to roll your own. And that's just basically landing data inside of Fabric, and Fabric will convert it for you. Databricks shortcut is that the Databricks mirror is actually a shortcut. So it's a Unity catalog mirror. So it actually just copies the metadata from the catalog, and then it is just a shortcut to the storage location. So it functions just like a shortcut, but we call it a mirror. That's why it says on this screen, metadata only. So why do I bring this up? The the reason is because Fabric data agents that we're going to get to, they have the ability to work off of things inside of Fabric, such as lakehouses, warehouses, semantic models, KQL databases, basically everything up here, because all of that data lives down here in OneLake. Well, what also lives in OneLake? Shortcuts and mirrors. So these data agents are not just going to be able to sit on data that lives physically inside of OneLake, like actually loaded into OneLake. It's going to be able to reach and extend out inside and outside of Azure through shortcuts and mirrors. And I'm going to get to you through the vision as we continue. So Fabric IQ, or I guess I'll pause there. Any questions before we move on about shortcuts and mirrors before getting to Fabric IQ and then eventually end our demo? Okay. Again, feel free to raise a hand, put questions in the chat. So with Fabric IQ, we've wrapped some things that already existed into Fabric IQ in a big wrapper, and some things are new. So now what we call Fabric IQ is this big workload. We have ontology, Fabric data agent, graph, operations agent, and semantic models. So the biggest change and the biggest thing that we're talking about, obviously in this presentation, is Fabric data agents. I'll get to that one. But the biggest groundbreaking change is going to be ontology, especially if you're in the AI space. So what is ontology? Well, you can read the screen, right? It's enterprise vocabulary semantic layer. Basically, think about an actual data catalog that binds to physical data and is updated live real time. As soon as your data is updated, the ontology is updated. So you get to apply all your business rules, all of your relationships, all of your measures, everything that you would use to describe your business of how it actually functions, and not just the way that the data is portraying that it is. Everyone's interpretation, you get to bind that to real data and use it. The other important thing is that this is actually backed by graph. So the third bullet down. So it is actually GraphQL how you interact with the ontology. So it has compute for nodes and edges, and that's actually how the data is actually connected. This improves AI search performance over just writing a SQL query or writing off the semantic model. So the ontology will have better performance for AI. More importantly, this will convert the data format to a unified language. So if you have AI agents elsewhere, let's just say Foundry, because this integrates with Foundry IQ, you would be able to consume an ontology directly. And it's in a native language to be consumed. So it's not interpreting it as SQL, it's not because it's graph. So it's just a native universal language for AI to be able to consume. It's converting these, whether it's a semantic model, whether it's a lakehouse, whether it's a warehouse, whether it's KQL, or if it's a combination of all four, they get converted into this graph, which can be easily consumed. So that's the big change. I have a video about this. We also have operations agents. So this is I have a video of this. So I'm not going to talk about this because there's just a 2-minute video on this. That'll be great. Semantic models are trusted old steed. We know that one. And today, Fabric data agents. Fabric data agents are a SaaS conversation agent that allows you to communicate in natural language, ask questions on semantic models, warehouses, lakehouses, other SQL endpoints, right? So again, when we think about it, Delta Parquet, those are managed tables. If I shortcut those from outside of Azure, they appear in a lakehouse inside of a table. That means I can sit a data agent on top of it. This has the ability to take Copilot a step further, right? I always get asked, well, hey, what's the difference between this and Copilot? Well, Copilot inside of a Power BI model is great, but there's some limitations with what it can do, some of the grounding that's there too, to kind of dictate its behavior. Fabric data agents have a little bit more capability. I'm going to show this video from Ignite. I have to just reshare because I have to change my audio. So don't blame me, blame Teams. So I'm just going to show these 2 videos back to back. One is they're both from Ignite and they're in total 3 minutes. And I just think they do a really good job of kind of showing overall what Fabric IQ is, and then also what the real-time operations agent is. And then we'll get into kind of the big vision. And yes, there are links to the videos that I will be able to send. It's in a public blog. So ignore the resharing. It's not just you. All right. I always think that's a fun video. And so this is the second one. This is just talking about the real-time agent, and then you're just gonna hear me talk after. No more videos. All right, and I'm just gonna reshare because I'm changing my. Actually, it should automatically switch. Okay. Any questions on any of those pieces before moving on? I promise I only have 3 more slides, and then we'll get to the demo. And I posted the blog that had those videos as well. It's just you can just search for it in Ignite. Okay, so I reason why I like to bring this up with other notable Fabric November releases is to show you the investment that Microsoft is making. You can see all of the different mirroring updates. So Snowflake iceberg tables. So if you had iceberg tables in Snowflake, you're now able to start mirroring them. But again, Snowflake proprietary format already existed. And what also is available is that, and that's GA, is that you can actually have Snowflake write to OneLake tables as your backend. So you can have Snowflake write to OneLake directly, and that be the backend for Snowflake. You also can see that there's SAP, there's Iceberg shortcuts to OneLake. So again, if you're having Iceberg, you can shortcut that and it'll work natively like Delta Parquet. And lots more different connectors. You can see all those different pieces, digital twin builder. And the reason why I talk about this is because they kind of show you, right? And Microsoft is a company that is not just making investments to make investments. You can see the vision of being this unified data platform and getting your data AI ready, right? And I say that with, with kind of like sarcasm because everyone's heard that marketing term. But in reality, this is the biggest vision that we have because we're now starting to combine all these different data sources and have this native integration across the board. And as far as I know, this is probably one of the only major data platforms that is actively integrating with its competitors, right? Every Oracle, SAP, Snowflake, Databricks, we're a first-party partner, but people seem to say that we're competitors when we're not. We are very much partners. And so we have, and many more, right? You saw that screen on there. And so there's lots of different competitors out in the world, and we're actively integrating with them. And mostly for free of cost, right? Mirroring is potentially free up to your SKU. Shortcuts, you obviously will pay for bandwidth pricing wherever your data is stored at. Microsoft does not charge you for bringing that into Azure, but of course, your provider would pay you for leaving it. So that's the vision, and you can see the investment of all these different pieces, Fabric IQ and all this stuff. Even more so, I know it's a little bit hard to see, but our cloud adoption framework, so a actual Microsoft certified gold standard stamp of architecture for agentic AI, Fabric IQ is sitting at the bottom, and Fabric is the base for the entire data estate. So starting from the bottom, this is Fabric and OneLake and different data domains, right? But what you'll see is that there's on-prem data, GCP, S3, Dataverse, M365, data all feeding into OneLake. From there, obviously, we can do whatever we want inside of Fabric. But from Fabric IQ and Fabric data agents, this is now feeding Microsoft Foundry for a multi-agentic AI architecture. And same thing, we have our Databricks data here that is feeding through mirroring back into OneLake to then flow through to your agents. So this isn't just, Mark coming up here or someone else from Microsoft or others that are saying, hey, like this is where we think it's going. This is where it is going, right? And we've put even our gold stamp approval of cloud adoption frameworks for agentic AI as soon as it released for Ignite. Fabric IQ is in preview, and we've already put the gold standard architecture out there. So this is the vision, right? Bringing your data from everywhere and sitting these agents on there because, again, the data just needs to physically look like it's in Fabric, shortcuts, or mirrors. Whether they just physically there with mirrors or you just do your normal ETL or things like that, you're able to extend this. This also applies to even manufacturing, right? If you hook your devices up to the IoT edge, you have your IoT hubs and you use the edge. Well, Fabric integrates natively with IoT hubs. So now you can seamlessly, with a few clicks, connect your machines that are located on-prem in your manufacturing plants and actually hook that up in the Fabric with the real time. You can sit operations agents on it, and you can sit Fabric data agents on it, and also integrate that in with Foundry or your own apps. So again, just a few clicks, you can kind of see that's the vision, that unified platform, that serving layer through Fabric. And most of the time, we have that architecture already built out for Power BI. Okay. Ooh, yes, question.
Hi, Mark. So I'm very familiar with the data agent creation experience to enhance Copilot for Power BI. You create a data agent, you have a very simple user experience where you select some data sources, maybe select multiple semantic models, provide some instructions, verified answers, but it's a completely no-code experience. And then it allows the user to chat with their data in Power BI Home, and essentially it'll direct those questions to the appropriate semantic model, et cetera. However, I work with a data science team who are a group of folks who have a lot of coding experience, a lot of application development experience. And it seems that from that perspective, that there is a flavor of data agents that are kind of a high code experience where they use Foundry and perhaps write custom code to either enhance or develop an agent that can be used in Fabric. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, so this data agent is the SaaS data agent. So you can't control which model it is, you can't control the temperature or other factors that you normally would. You can deploy via code, you can interact with this in an SDK. So if you wanted to interact and ask it questions via the API, you absolutely can. But if it's your data scientists that are saying, hey, we want to be able to control, maybe additionally train or, control everything that we normally do with our agents in Foundry, they wouldn't be able to do that. They can orchestrate a multi-agentic approach. So they can have, if you have like an enterprise application, like an enterprise like AI chatbot or something like that, you can add the Fabric Data Agent as another agent in there. But in terms of having control, all routes for the data agent go through it. Now, that changes though with Fabric IQ with ontology, because what you would do if that was the case, you would build an ontology. The Fabric data agent would sit on the ontology as the source. And your data scientists can still use that same ontology for their agents without having to go through the Fabric data agent. I hope that makes sense because I said agent a lot.
Right, and I guess with our customers, we have to be very careful about what we mean when we're talking about agents. But to clarify, what I'm hearing is that the Fabric data agent is really the no code, low code experience.
Yes.
Where you're enhancing the functionality of assets within Fabric rather than building something from scratch using code.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right. So enough of the slides. So I'm just going to walk through creating a data agent. I always do this just to show you how easy it is, kind of like what Paul was talking about, right? So if I want to create a new agent, I'm in Fabric, I'm in my workspace. And if I just come into here for new item, I hit agent, let's just call this new agent. I hit create. So now I'm in this kind of like playground set, and let me just put zoom in on. I think I have it on, but who knows? So in this add data, you can also connect this to an Azure AI search as well. So if you already had that AI search index, you can add this to the data agent as a data source. Or if you hit data source, you get everything that your current user has access to. And what you'll notice, at least in my environment, I have lakehouses, I have ontologies, I have semantic models, I have KQL databases. You also see here a mirrored Databricks database. So I'll click the mirrored Databricks database. I don't know why it looks like that. Don't ask me. I'm not the product team. I have no idea. But I have one table in here. So I'll select it. And now I'll just go ahead and say, I'll just ask some questions. This is just claims data. What age or what year has the most? Let me put birth year just to be specific. Has the most claims. So the benefit about these SaaS data agents, you don't need to know anything about. Sure, it's always great to know those things, but you don't need to. And you can see here, the birth year with the most claims is 1927. This is the SQL code that it's writing. Select top one. I can see this information. Here's the raw data. Great. Looks good. I think this is beautiful. It's the best agent I've ever created. I'm going to publish it. You can also publish it to the agent store in M365 Copilot. I hit publish. And I wait. And it's done. And if I come to the gear, I can see it's deployed to a model endpoint. So congratulations. We have just hooked up data that is outside of Fabric. So I hooked up created a data agent. I hooked it up to Databricks data. I verified that it worked, and I just deployed it to a model endpoint to be consumed via API, either in Fabric or elsewhere. And now it can integrate with Foundry and Copilot. That took probably about 30 seconds. Just to show you how easy it is and how powerful this really is, of kind of the questions before, right? Hey, we have data scientists that need to curate this. They need to go through all the LLM processing. They need to pick the models. They need to go X, Y, Z. Now, your business users who have this business domain knowledge can easily create these items. Now, I'll walk you, and again, this is data living in Databricks. Response time, 7 seconds, pretty standard. It's actually in a different region too. But let's walk through one that actually has a little bit more data in it. So all credit to this goes to Greg Beaumont and Interana. I will drop their GitHub into the chat. This is for healthcare. They do a great job of providing these samples to where it will actually deploy this lakehouse of the public CMS data, so the public claims data. And there's about 220 million rows in here. And they also have the ability to create, they also have this creating data agents as well as different reports. So it's a great sample repository if you're looking for demos or to try things on your own. Have to give that plug and shout out to my colleagues Inder and Greg for creating and maintaining this. Okay, so our data is just the CMS data and a lakehouse. Of course, you can pick semantic models, but I'm not the greatest at DAX, to be honest with you, so I prefer to be in SQL. So that's just the language that I'm best in. So I'm also choosing a lakehouse. This is a star schema. So I have drug costs that's the fact table, the year, provider, geography, drug. Inside of the setup, we have agent instructions. So basically giving the agent its purpose, right? Telling it what it should do, how it should think, etc. And you can see lots of information. This is part of the CMS Medicare Part D prescribers and provider drug data set. It's got the MPIs, it's got drug, brand name, generic name. If you're not used to healthcare data, basically it's just all of the drug data in the United States when doctors provide, when a claim comes into the hospital, the doctor has to provide that and they actually dispense the drug. All of that gets tracked. Of course, the patient's name and things like that are stripped, but the providers are all public information. So that's what this information is. Just a bunch of history about Americans taking drugs. No, I mean, well, yes, but prescription drugs. So in here, the best part is that there's data source instructions. So this is where we can take it to the next level. So when we think about the Copilot and semantic models and things like that, it's working off metadata. Same thing with the rest of agents, right? It's working off of metadata, your column names, your table names, your data types, etc. But what if you need to take it a step further? Because, you know, again, I'm a realist. I've seen and I've worked in many places. Sometimes your naming standard is absolutely terrible. It's awful, god awful. And I always describe it, if you have a new intern or new employee that gets dropped in and they don't know anything about your environment, if they don't understand what the table says and what it means, then how do you expect an AI to? Well, this is where we do it. So in this scenario, we describe all the tables and columns. So for example, the drug table provides what the actual name of it is. Sorry for that quick markdown there. It talks about the brand name is the BRND underscore name is the brand name, provider, etc. All these fun things, right? So you get the idea, first, last name. But what's also really important is here also talking about the different measures, you know, tote bens, which I think is funny, is total beneficiaries, things like that. Here, for when we're talking about the classifications of drugs, this is not something in a metadata. This is not a column. This is actually interpreting the data. So for example, all ACE inhibitor drugs contain PRIL within the generic name of this table. Same thing with quinolone, right? They will contain phylaxin. You know, you get the idea. Statins, that's an easy one. Statin, benzos, they contain Zolam or Zepam. Now, the interesting one is for beta blockers, where we say that it contains OLOL, but there's an exception. Carvedilol, I don't even know if I'm pronouncing this right, but you get the idea. That's not a true data blocker, so it should be excluded, right? It's an exception. So again, we're telling it, okay, here's the column name. So when people ask for an ACE inhibitor, it's going to know to look to the generic name, but doesn't know how to filter it. I don't know. We'll see. And then we also have provider specialties for internist. Internist or internal medicine will contain internal medicine in this prescriber type. Well, we also have our example queries. So this is probably one of the more important functions. So this is to say, hey, I asked it a question. It returned a wrong answer. This thing is stupid. Well, sure, okay, I could see that. But really, we have to provide it examples of how we want it to answer. How in the world would it know that your organization alone counts 3 additional columns for revenue when the rest of the world only counts maybe just net sales, right? How are they supposed to know? Or the classic example for when I worked at a company was I worked with HR data for one project, and it was calculating turnover, right? And it was all the different reasons why someone may leave or be terminated from their position. And one of them was death, right? If the person died while they were working there, does that count towards turnover? And there was actually a large debate of whether or not that counted against your turnover rate negatively if someone died. And so how would an AI know to include or exclude that information, right? So it's kind of that concept of, hey, this question came up. Let me tell you how we do it, right? Let me tell you how we do it here. So this is where you can really suss out a lot of the tribal knowledge. And I'm going to walk you through an example of that. But you can see this is where you would write the SQL query if you wanted to write it in a certain way. If you want it to be a certain efficiency, things like that, you can do that. You can mix and match data, different data sources. I wouldn't really recommend that. Just because I personally, Mark's opinion, I would rather create different agents assigned to those data sources, simply because it's going to be better performance overall. And I always think about it of like, you have, when you're building a house, you don't have one person doing everything. You typically have like a general contractor, and they will coordinate and say, hey, oh, this is actually, a plumbing issue. Let me talk to the plumber, and the plumber comes in, right? And same thing with the electrician, and same thing with the HVAC or the heater specialist, right? So same kind of concept. All right. I don't see any questions, so we'll just keep rolling. Show total cost percent change for 2021. 8.92%. So if we drill down, we can see here's the SQL query. Again, 12 seconds, it gives the raw data. Pretty great. It also is giving the example queries of what it's using as part of its reference, which is cool. But that's easy, right? Anyone can really answer that. Show cost per day of ACE inhibitors in the state of Florida for internists in the year 2020. A little bit more specific. So we know that ACE inhibitors are in here. We know that we gave it instructions on how to answer. So here it gives it cost per day. Breaking it down, if I hit the next step, I can see this query. And what I can also see is that it's filtered the generic name, like PRIL. This is a pretty complex query. I mean, simply, like conceptually, it's pretty simple, but it's joining 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tables together, has a where clause, doing like statements. It's pretty impressive that it wrote this and executed it and returned it in 10 seconds.
And you've got a couple of questions in chat, Mark.
Perfect. So I'll just run down. What's the best practice to use AI to be able to answer questions regarding a Power BI report, training the Power BI Copilot using a Fabric data agent? It really just depends on what the scope of what your users are trying to do. We do have the Q&A functionality in Power BI reports. So I would say you can start there. That's very easy for the users to interact with it, right? And you can go on and you can say, hey, what are my users really doing with this? Does it expand outside of what the report can offer? Or do they need to kind of have additional like conversation, right? And more follow-up. If they do, that's where data agents can come into play. So that's where you can really kind of get into that. But they both have their place, if that makes sense.
And just to help add this, we have been deploying Fabric data agents in Teams via Copilot Studios as well. So there's a lot of ways to surface and for end users that are comfortable in different areas of the Microsoft stack.
Incidentally, my presentation next month is on this topic.
But that's synergy
of enhancing Power BI Copilot with data agents.
And Mark, I kind of wanted to ask you a question. So
yeah,
this is a bit of a leading question, but I am curious to get your feedback on how are we feeling about the level of accuracy. We've done some financial deployments in the past, and accuracy would generally be like 94, 95% plus, but when you're dealing with figures and finance, 95% might as well be miles off. And so I'm curious, as this has progressed and improved, how we're feeling about level of accuracy when we're asking questions against, the warehouse or semantic model.
I feel accurate about it if you do a lot of the prep. And when I say prep, providing it example questions. Ideally, you should have like 50 plus questions. Like you really want, if you deploy this data agent, you want to stress test it. You want people to get wrong answers because you want to find out all those random use cases and random things that people are asking because you don't know. Take an inventory of it and make sure you get the right answers and provide it because then it's going to be able to go, oh, someone's asked me this question before. Now I know how to answer it. And again, I'll show you an example at the end of this where it doesn't need to be word for word the same question. It just needs to be similar, right? Hey, someone's asking about revenue. I know that I have a revenue example query, and that's going to be, let's say, 3 of these columns. So I'll do that from now on. Things like that. So it is accurate, but you do need to do the work ahead of time. Just with any AI agent, nothing is perfect out of the box. You do have to do a little bit of work here. And of course, validate it to make sure it is right. And again, there's always a chance that it's not 100% perfect. And if you need it to be 100% perfect for a report, then you can still leverage the measures here. But as soon as you're going off of it, that's kind of where, again, there's always a chance. But you have to do the work ahead of time to provide these instructions and you have to provide these example questions. And I personally haven't had a customer have issues with it. Again, it's coming to the end of its preview life, so it should be going GA soon. That's not private information. It's on the public roadmap. You can see that the estimated target date's in March. So even during the preview, there weren't really issues with like hallucinations or accuracy that at least I was aware of. It was more kind of performance and functionality.
Yeah, and Raymond just said he's been wishing there's a way to embed an agent into a Power BI report, the agent using the same data model as the report. Isn't that doable? Can't you just feed it the semantic model that feeds the Power BI reports?
Yeah, you literally just go and hit add data, data source, semantic model.
Can I clarify that question real quick?
Sure.
Do it.
I'll come off. Let me just come on. But so, yeah, I've built an agent that feeds or uses a data model just like you're showing right there, right? Just the Power BI data. But what would be neat is to be able to take that agent and then embed it back into the Power BI report, so that if the report doesn't cover everything, the agent could be there to answer ad hoc questions about it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Versus
that may come in the future. I'm not sure.
But anyway, yeah.
No, I know what you're saying. May come in future. I'm not sure exactly if it is planned or not planned. I have no idea. But I do see the value in that for sure. And so there's another question, this is probably getting ahead, but once you build the agent, have tested it and feel good about it's working, what's the recommended way to surface it for end users? Completely depends on how you want to serve it up. So users can come directly to the Power BI workspace and they wouldn't see all of this because obviously I'm a developer or an admin, so I have full control. But they could interact with this via API. So if you have, let's say, your own custom web page or something like that, you can develop just whatever you want for folks to enter their questions, and it will just call the API in the background. There's also an SDK. So if you wanted to write notebooks to have this interact, and of course it interacts with Foundry. So however you have folks, and also Copilot Studio. So like however you have folks interacting with Copilot or Foundry, they can also interact with the data agent behind the scenes. They wouldn't know, but that's how you can surface it. So there's lots of ways for you to ingest this. And I'll show you that at the end, how it looks in Foundry and Copilot Studio.
Hey, Mark, Lee Coates here. I've got a question, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah.
Thanks for showing all this. Really impressed with the ability to, use data to answer questions. Not seeing a lot on using agents to call other tools, especially for doing like data transformation. Can you speak to if that's possible today or if there might be that possibility in the future?
Out of scope for this. If you're asking for data agents' ability to do that, no, they can't do that. Can other agents like in Foundry and things like that do that? Yeah, absolutely. I would just say it's out of scope for this.
Not built in to be able to call those tools.
You can call, like if you wanted to orchestrate via APIs, like Fabric Notebooks can do that, but Fabric data agents are just a SaaS conversation agent. They're not.
You couldn't put in your instructions enough knowledge for it to know how to interact with like Airflow or something. Okay.
Nope. Not at this time. I don't know if that's planned or not, but right now it's just the SaaS data agents. Now, the operations agent can call like Power Automate to execute workflows. So like in your real time, like in that video and things like that, to say like, hey, as soon as let's say the temperature on my machine gets above, 150 degrees, notify someone. And as soon as that happens, it triggers and says, hey, this is happening, and triggers like Power Automate notebooks. And those Power Automate notebooks may kick off a million different things, right? May kick off pagers, may kick off email alerts, may kick off other agentic flows, right? So operations agents have a lot more freedom and functionality via Power Automate. Data agents are mostly the SaaS conversation agents sitting on top of your data.
Yeah, great, thank you.
So just to continue on, I see that there's lots of chats. I'm trying to scroll.
I think you've covered everyone but the last one that just came in.
There's so much stuff going on. Is there a recommended path you would recommend to learn Agent Copilot Foundry IQ? If you're trying to learn agents, to be honest with you, you don't need to really know anything to do Fabric data agents, right? And that's kind of the beauty of it. It's this low code, no code experience. And that's the same thing with Copilot Studio too. You can do really cool things with the Fabric data agents, and also you can do more with Copilot Studio, where you can build your own copilots in a low code, no code environment. I would say start there, especially if you're completely new, because if you start off with Foundry and that's kind of like that pro code environment and really like a data scientist and your ML engineers and things like that, that's where they're comfortable in. I wouldn't jump right there. You can sure learn a little bit more to be dangerous, of course, but I would start off with Copilot Studio and some of the low code, no code experiences. See if it solves your problem. See if it's able to kind of grasp the concepts and things like that. Because then the back end of that is basically all the pro code stuff that Foundry is doing, which you can do way more. So that's what I would suggest, is kind of see what your skill level is at. If it's at bare nothing where I don't know what the word agent means, I would start off with the Copilot Studio and just interacting with these low code, no code, because oftentimes they can get the job done for you. Okay. So let's ask it a little bit more complicated question, right? Show top 10 doctors who have total cost change greater than 10 and total days supply change greater than 10 in 2021 versus 2020. Pretty complex question. If business asked me this, I would probably ask a few follow-up questions, right? But you can see it's working. And it gave an answer out. I don't even think I could write this T-SQL statement even close to 18 seconds. So if we're thinking about that, right? So it's doing a bunch of sums. It's doing a having clause, which is always great. Doing a comparison. It's doing these different joins and ordering that and doing a top 10. So pretty impressive that it's able to do this. Because again, if we're talking about the skill of like an intern or a junior developer, like this would take some time. It took this 18 seconds to actually understand what I was asking, to send the query back and return the results. So pretty impressive. And can you ask it just pointed questions, or you can ask it like leading questions? So let's ask it, show me details for any outliers within the data over the course of the historical trending. Pretty open-ended, right? Again, if I was asked this by the business, I would have a lot more follow-up questions to say like, hey, like, okay, well, what does historical mean for you? Like how much time are we talking about? What do you define as an outlier? Those are very valid questions. And you'll see that the data agent responds, right? It's going to give us an answer. Here's the answer that it came up with, whose total drug costs and total day supply stand out over historical trending. So it gives different years, different providers, several others, and lists a bunch of other providers have extremely high value more recent years. And so the query that it decided to do is also pretty complex. We're doing CTEs, we're doing a cross join, and this is where it's doing a standard deviation. So again, like pretty complex stuff that it's able to whip out very, very quickly and do this cross join. And this is where you could go in and if someone said, what does an outlier mean to me? You could adjust this, right? You could say, actually, it's going to be 4 times the standard deviation cost, right? And that's in this S in stats where it's doing the standard deviation. So you can adjust all these pieces if you wanted to. Now, what the nice thing is that if I collapse this, it's asking for follow-up. If you would like a specific breakdown of any of these providers or want to narrow the outlier analysis, let me know. So let's look into Cedric Davis. I have nothing against this person. I have no idea. Break this down further for Cedric Davis. I have no idea what that means, right? I'm just like, hey, you offered, right? You offered to break it down. Let's break it down. All right, so now it's just actually passing through that filter, and it gives me all of the years and the full trending for this provider. And you can see a summary here exhibited dramatic increases both drug costs and day supply in recent years, especially from 2021 onward. And I would also agree, this person went from 18,000, 14,000, 9,000 to 1 million to 31 million to 40 million, 137 million total drug cost for family practice, right? I have no idea who this provider is, but this is, again, just the data where, hey, I asked it to show me outliers. It gave me some outliers. I asked it to then break it down further by year, and I have more detail. So the other thing, right, this information is awesome. Can it provide me an executive level summary of the most impactful data trends in the form of a one-pager? All this stuff is great, but how am I going to explain this to my boss? Right? How am I going to explain this to the board? How am I going to explain this? Well, here's a nice way. Executive summary for everything that we've talked about in this chat. You can see dramatic growth in drug spending. Overall, that was the very first question we ask. Variation to provider level, our nice Cedric Davis. Steep rises in day supplies. Geographic and specialty insights, so our ACE inhibitors. Outliers over time, and even recommendations. Folks monitoring, analyze different drivers behind cost surges, and explore cost variations among drugs within a class to identify potential savings or prescribing efficiencies. And again, let's break this out by state and provider type. I don't know. I change these questions every time I do this demo. I have no idea. That's a pretty big query. I can't even write this, and I know I've said it a bunch, but I can't even write that in the amount of time that it's pulling these out. And you can see geographic changes, state Wisconsin, Virginia, North Carolina, and Tennessee are frequent leaders. It's also talking about here dermatologic surgery. That's a good one in these states. Registered nurse anesthetists in these states. You get the idea, right? So there are lots of benefits here to it's this conversation. So the Q&A of the Copilot feature and things like that can't really get to this level. They can't have this ability of conversing, this ability of kind of this free form. So this is where you can take it a step further and kind of, this is something that folks can interact with and get quick insights about your data, especially saying, hey, we have this big semantic model and it's really great, but we can't build every measure out that folks might want to use. What can we do? Well, you can do this. And I see a question in the chat, does it do SQL or can it show DAX? Yes, it will change for whatever the data source is. So if I was pointing to a semantic model, these would convert to DAX queries, and I would provide example DAX queries in return in my section. For the SQL endpoints, so like the lakehouses and warehouses, it will run SQL. And for KQL databases, it will run KQL. So it would just depend on what your source is of what it would translate to. And if it was ontology, it would be GraphQL. Okay. So what if we ask it? So I kind of alluded to this. So what do we do? So show the top 10 highest drug prices within the Southern United States. I'm going to give a scenario where I ask it a question and it's not what I was expecting. I go, okay. I see, I don't know, Oklahoma in here. I asked for Southern United States. My organization does not believe that Oklahoma is in the Southern United States. Neither is Texas. You know, sure, I'm sure people have grief about that, but hey, I'm not saying it. My organization, we do all of our policies, we do all of our measures, and we base it off of the southern states, and we exclude Oklahoma, Texas. What do I do? Well, you can take an example query. So if I come back to setup and I go to example queries, I hit add. You can also import this from JSON too. I'll put the question I just asked. Show the top 10 highest drug prices within the Southern United States. I'll put a query in here that I already pre-wrote. You'll notice that Texas and Oklahoma are excluded from my filter criteria. So now, whenever someone asks a question about this, I now go back. It should now respond with excluding Texas and Oklahoma. So let me ask the same question, right? Show top 10 highest drug prices within the Southern United States. I'm expecting it to return the exact same query that I had. If I come down here to the query, what we'll see, yes, Oklahoma and Texas have been removed. Now, will it work if I don't ask the exact same question? Show average cost per day of beta blockers in the South in the year 2021. No United States, no Southern, no state even. Will it be able to pick it up? The answer is yes. I just have no patience for anything, so I always click through faster. You can see that it's still using the exact same filter criteria of excluding Oklahoma and Texas because it knows that someone described the South of excluding Oklahoma and Texas. So this is that concept of open up to your users and showcase this to them. And you'd be surprised, like, I know that everyone in their organization's like, oh, like our stuff is really simple. It's never the case, right? Everyone's always has what we call that tribal knowledge, right? Oh, I know that we normally would do it this way, but in reality, we do it this way. We count revenue with these three columns. We exclude Texas and Oklahoma out of the South, right? We do all these different things. And so you want people to identify those, and you can provide that functionality so now it knows how to answer. So now anytime something comes up from in the South, it knows that it's going to be able to filter it and say, oh yeah, I forgot that this company is weird and they do that, right? So that's kind of the thinking there. And this is why you really want to build a solid knowledge base for your AI and for your agent. Yes, it's a SaaS. Yes, it's great. Yes, it's a conversation agent. It's super, super powerful. Doesn't mean it's going to be perfect. And we can get as close to perfect as we can with these example questions. And you should, again, have like 50 plus of these if you really are talking about some of your models. Open it up to some users that you trust and just understand it's like in a beta phase for you. And just ask them to document all the questions, what they were expecting to be the right answer, and what it gave them. And so that way you can pump that back in and start these iterations. Eventually you're going to run out of questions, right? That's kind of the idea. Eventually it's going to work for everyone. Of course, you should always have that hotline if things aren't working as well to go do that. But this is, again, just normal AI interactions and flows that you normally go through. And yes, in the chat for Raymond talked about, for my testing, agents need to pick up on the info you put into Power BI models when you use the Prep for AI feature. So setting up verified answers seems to be able to serve as those example queries when you use a Power BI semantic model. 100%, the Prep for AI feature is critical for everything that we're talking about. It will enrich the metadata. It will provide all of those pieces. We highly, highly recommend it. And we even post best practices in our documentation for prepping your data. A lot of the stuff is pretty self-explanatory. Don't name something column 1, right? Give it an actual name, right? So some of that stuff's intuitive, some of it isn't. Now I already have this published. So in Foundry, so now I'm in the old portal of Foundry. I haven't done the new portal of Foundry. I'm in my agent. So if I come to agents, I already have one created. And just to kind of show you the new, if I wanted to, if I hit new agent and I come down to the bottom right under knowledge, if I hit add, what you'll see is this screen, add knowledge, and you'll see Microsoft Fabric. I already have a connection, but you can just create one. It's the workspace ID and artifact ID. You can find that information in your URL of your workspaces after groups, and the artifact ID. Don't worry that it says AI skills. It's AI. It's a data agent. So just ignore that. It's in preview, so we're still going to be updating those pieces. But it's the ID after the artifact name. You'll see like Lakehouse things there. That's all you would do. And this is just what it looks like after, right? But once that's connected, it's already happening. That's how easy it is to connect. I'm going to try in the playground. I'll just ask it this same simple question. And I'll just be in the CMS data, just so it knows to try and check the CMS data agent. You'll see looking for references using Microsoft Fabric. And here we see that 8.92%. We can view the run info, and at the bottom, we can see the tool that's used is Fabric Data Agent. You can see the input, and you can see the output response. So this is calling the agent directly, just like how we would be passing a question in normally. That's how we would be doing it. Again, this is how Foundry can do it. So you can set up your multi-agentic architecture to say, hey, I have an enterprise chat assistant that's based out of Foundry. Can I add the data agent? Yeah, absolutely. You can add it as a knowledge source, right? And same thing with ontology too. Ontology would be able to be added directly as well. So you have this integration between Foundry and Fabric for AI very, very seamlessly and very easily. And even when we get to Copilot Studio, my Copilot Studio wasn't working that well, so that's why you just see a blank agent here. I don't know if it's going to work, but I can at least show you where to add it. So in my agents, let's just say I'm in this agent. It's an enterprise agent that I just created. I go to other agents. I hit add. I keep getting this. I'll troubleshoot it later, but that's not the important part. I'll hit connect to an external agent, and what you'll see here is Microsoft Fabric, Foundry, 365 Agents SDK, agent to agent. We're going to hit Fabric. I already have a connection in place. I can hit next. And you can see here's all of our agents. And you can even see the new agent that we created for Databricks. And I don't know, it definitely isn't going to work, but I kept getting that server error. But if it does, that'd be great. But this is how easy it is to add these agents to Copilot Studio too. So there's these lots of integrations in between. No way it would just work. That's crazy. I tried this for 4 different times today. Okay, let's see. A new agent. What year had what birth year? Sure, I'll allow the data agent MCP server. I clicked you. I clicked it. Honestly, this is the first. I can't believe this is working. The demo gods have looked down on me with their grace. I've tried this so many times today, and it didn't work, even right before this.
While
honestly
we're
don't know how
waiting
many
for
times
this,
I clicked that.
while
Yeah.
we're waiting for this, we got one question in here.
I'm having trouble understanding the mapping. Any good documentation I can use to map out the agent ecosystem? I'm not sure what you mean by agent ecosystem. Could you explain, Taylor, either in chat or on a?
Yeah, I don't mind. So I'm just like when you're selecting the tool and you're selecting which agent you want to use and like how you're connecting these things all together, I'm just noticing that there's a lot of different agents and different tools available. And so I kind like I don't really even understand the difference between when I go to Copilot and it looks different than my Microsoft 365 Copilot. So I'm right at the beginning of trying to get my head around all of the different Copilots and all the different agents. And so I'm hoping that there's like a mapping or something that kind of shows that.
I don't know I'm not an AI and app specialist. I imagine Purview might be able to do that, but I'm not entirely sure off the top of my head of what would be able to kind of map, like kind of like a lineage type thing to say like these agents talk to these, etc.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm not sure. There very well may be. That it's just not my area of expertise. In Microsoft, at least in my role, we're broken up into infra, data, and app and AI. So all like the AI and like APIM and all that good stuff, like there are separate folks. I imagine there's a way, um, but I'm not sure. I don't know how many times I have to click this. I'm not going to wait on it because you can even see under the gear. So back in Fabric, here's the publishing for the API. So if you want to interact with it via API, you can. And then here's even the MCP server URL that you can use too. So that's kind of what Copilot's using. Again, I don't know. I'm never in Copilot Studio, but more importantly, just showing you that here's the way to configure it and how easy it is to integrate. I didn't have to do this over in Foundry. Other than that, any other questions? Because I have no other content. We have 6 minutes till the last runtime, so feel free to get your questions in before I go to bed.
I'll throw one out there. Could you expand a little bit on how, thinking about how I've seen AI deployments be successful in like multi-agent architecture, how you can integrate Fabric data agents with Foundry agents, and where you would really want to start focusing on leveraging something like Foundry versus just a Fabric data agent?
This is the cloud adoption framework that I alluded to. I'll post this link in the chat. This is our blessed architecture for agentic AI. This is where in this architecture, Foundry agents are meant to be like your enterprise serving for agentic AI, just like how it is now with like APIM and all of those good pieces, right? Controlling that deployment and building the model base and building the data unification layer inside of Fabric and showing it with Fabric IQ. So this is where you would start. If you have Databricks data, you can mirror that into OneLake and you have data from other sources, right? Because again, it's, hey, if your workload is in Snowflake, you don't need to migrate to Fabric. Of course, at Microsoft, we would love you to, right? That'd be awesome. But you don't need to do it to leverage the benefits of Fabric. Same thing with, again, on-prem, S3, all that good stuff. You can today, without migrating, leverage Fabric IQ, data agents, etc. And through that, the Foundry agents are using the data from Fabric. Of course, you'll have Fabric data agents that might have to be on their own, but if we're talking like a full-scale agentic AI, high-level architecture, how Foundry and Fabric relate, Foundry is using the data sources and agents and ontologies inside of Fabric and using that for their agents and Foundry IQ. You can read all about this data architecture as well.
Yeah.
So
it was funny to me too at FabCon, just seeing the Snowflake VP of product on stage talking about their mirroring to Fabric. I was just dealing with a lot of the competition between Snowflake and Synapse before that. It was just kind of surprising.
I told you, probably the only product on the planet that is actively integrating with its competitors.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and this is the vision, right? And that's kind of it feels weird. And I've had customers, like for example, a healthcare customer, the one I mentioned previously, they had 55 terabytes in Snowflake. Now that was their enterprise serving layer, so they were already heavy Power BI users, but they would do either import or direct query.
Yep.
And what Snowflake is really good at, right, is data warehousing. What it's not good at is like this high concurrency of reads that Power BI would demand. And so they're spending a lot in clusters. They're having to expand more and more on the Snowflake side for clusters to support all the reads from Power BI. And then all of a sudden mirroring came along and they said, okay, well, in my same F64 that I'm already paying for Power BI, you're telling me that I can mirror 55 terabytes for free, and it's available asynchronously. So now it's available. They repointed all the reports. They didn't even need to use direct lake mode. They can still use import and direct query, but they're able to turn down some of their cost on the Snowflake side because they didn't need all the clusters anymore. And again, the Fabric side, their cost stayed the same because they, the mirroring was free, and they already were using the same sources, and actually performance got better because they didn't have to go to Snowflake and also translate it out of the proprietary format and then fly it over the gateways. It was just local inside of Fabric in native format. So
I had the
like
exact
there's
same
lots of
scenario for a big fashion brand, and they were doing the exact same thing you just outlined, and they started mirroring to Fabric and doing direct lake and getting real-time reporting or near real-time reporting versus huge delays with direct query, which I don't think surprises anybody.
Yeah. And one question I get asked all the time, I get is asynchronous. How fast is it? How, tell me how long. And then I'm like, well, it depends. If your system can handle, because it all depends on the amount of changes that occur. If you have a single change that happens, yeah, that's going to show up pretty quickly, within seconds, maybe. But if you have all of a sudden in one snap of an instant, a billion transactions occur, right? That's going to take some time to replay and stream. And I've had a customer to where they couldn't even set up mirroring or any, because again, mirroring isn't like this new technology. It's leveraging change data capture and leveraging change tracking capabilities in SAP and Oracle and in Snowflake. So if you, like for example, SQL Server, if your server couldn't handle turning on CDC already, then you're not going to be able to handle mirroring, because CDC is tracking transactions and it adds overhead to the transactions. And so I had a customer that every 15 minutes, and I'm not even exaggerating, I wish I was, they had a table that was 5 billion rows. A billion of them actually turned out to be duplicates, but they would, every 15 minutes, null out an entire column, so 5 billion rows of just one column. They would put a null value, and then they would just replace it with the same value. Nothing changed. And so they just generated 10 billion transactions for nothing. And they did that every 15 minutes. So of course, when they turned on to try and do their read replicas, it just broke their entire server. And so that same problem arises with mirroring, where it's leveraging the existing technologies. So you just need to make sure that you can do that. Now, if you can't do that, let's say your server says, hey, your DBA says, hey, like we can't turn on CDC for whatever reason. There's always valid reasons, not just performance related. You can use open mirroring, which basically you just control, which says, hey, I'm going to run basically a batch job that extracts data out, and you just land it in a spot in Fabric, and then Fabric takes it and converts it for you and quote mirrors it. So there's that there. And a lot of vendors are actually building like kind of wizards and APIs out there for open mirroring. So you can do like Golden Gate. They do open mirroring, so you can mirror Golden Gate data in a wizard because that team built basically a UI in front of this open mirroring for you.
Paul, do you have a question?
Yeah. So, Mark, you said you have a pretty strong background with Databricks, but you work for Microsoft. Just in terms of agentic AI integration, how would you compare the two platforms, just in terms of maturity, vision, capability?
I would say that capability wise, and again, I might be biased, I think Microsoft edges out Databricks simply by the question of what if you want to do stuff outside of Databricks?
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where I leave that question. Like Genie's great, like all the stuff in there is great, and it's awesome. And if your entire ecosystem was in Databricks, great. But that's not always the case. Sometimes it is, right? Sometimes it is, and Genie's great, and doing ML workflows inside of Databricks is awesome. Like I have tons of customers that use it for their like ML ops and data scientist platform, 100%. But when it comes to the overall vision of like agentic AI, I don't see it as often And again, this is just my opinion, like on the recording and stuff like that. It's just my opinion. Like I don't know what other folks are out there that are doing.
Sure, but you
Simply
have a
because,
perspective that,
yeah,
that I
simply
value.
because everyone's got data everywhere. And so Foundry just has the ability to pick and choose and even use Genie. Like if you want to use Genie from Foundry, you can. And so that's kind of the point of like, if your data is everywhere, Foundry just has such a stronger play. And not again, it's not even a competitor because you can use both. Like I've had customers that orchestrate Genie from Foundry. We have the integration along with all the other models. So that kind of the question, that's where it kind of comes down to is, do you want to do stuff outside of Databricks? But lots of customers build it for their AI and use it for their AI and ML models and things like that, for sure.
Thank you.
So yeah, both mature, both great. It just depends on like the scale and scope you're trying to do it.